Hello, and thank you for joining a special edition Halo Life, angelsnation.com, Palm Springs Experience 60 on 60 podcast. This is the second edition, and with us to share his memories of his experience as an Angels fan during the first half of the Angels' history and their spring training facility in Palm Springs, California, is Stu Matthews. Stu, I'm so excited to hear about your experience, literally growing up in the shadow of those giant mountains in Palm Springs, California.
That's right, the San Jacinto Mountains, man. And I'm so glad that you really kick started my memory on this whole thing because sometimes we file these memories away, and you really brought them back to the forefront because they were really special memories. Palm Springs was such a special place. It was Gene Autry made it that way, and it was a relaxed atmosphere. It was a place where the players wanted to be close to the fans. The fans wanted to be close to the players. You were bringing up the old chain link fence back in the day, and that's what it was. So like my first memories were back in the early '70s. I'd say 1970 through '75, when my mom and dad would stick my sister and I in the station wagon, not my dad's 1969 Mustang. We couldn't fit in the 1969 Mustang, but we could fit in that station wagon. And I wasn't an autograph hound like you were. I was I was a baseball junkie. I was becoming a little leaguer, and I would go out there, and it was a party for me. I don't really remember much about the park. I like the park surrounding the complex. I just wanted to get there. So, like, they might have packed us in the car at 6 o'clock in the morning, all grumpy, and we get out there. But when the sun was shining out in Palm Springs, an hour and a half down the road, my dad had booked us into some kind of economical motel somewhere, not far from Palm Canyon Drive, and we go to the ball game. And I remember, now I was obsessed, and I have to say, I was obsessed with Jim Fregosi. And I was just speaking to Bobby Knopf the other day, and I explained to Bobby Knopf that Jim Fregosi was my hero. And Bobby told me, well, you couldn't have picked much of a better hero. And that's kind of nice to hear, really, in retrospect. Jim Fregosi was the leader of the team, but he was my hero. And I remember being on a one-way mission when I was there. My dad had some kind of connection with the team. He knew ticket sales representative, so we were able to get better seats in the grandstands than most people could get. We would be actually sitting behind the dugout, and I remember foul balls being hit down the right field line. And of course, I was like 7 years old or whatever, and I absolutely had boundless energy, and I would be just taking off at a sprint, um, chasing after these foul balls. Didn't matter who hit them. Roger Repose, Rick Reichert, and if Jim Fregosi hit one, I was chasing down his ball. I don't care how far down the right field line it got. I was after it, and I brought it back. And my sister, 2 years older than me, had a little bit more courage than I did, and I would run back. I would run all the way back, hand the ball to my mom, and say, "Mom, Jim Fregosi hit this one. Give it to my sister. Give it to Chrissy, and she'll know what to do." And sure enough, my sister had enough courage that when Fregosi would get in the on deck circle, I'm talking on deck circle, she would walk up there, her hair in that little flying nun haircut, with the headband and wearing her little dress, 11 years old or whatever. And she'd hand the ball over to Jim Fregosi and say, "Mr. Fregosi, would you please sign my ball for me?" And he'd smile at her and get a pen, sign it for her, hand it right back over the wall. It was that easy. It was that relaxed. The players wanted to be close to the fans, And I got a Jim Fregosi signed ball, and it was a treasure for many, many years. But there are other things, just the closest to the players. I remember sitting in the stands watching a game, and Big Jim Spencer, the first baseman on those 1970s teams,
Mhm.
Big Jim Spencer, power hitter. And at some point during one game, I think it was sixth, seventh inning, he may have come out of the game, but his family were sitting right near us. And Big Jim Spencer just came around the fence wearing his full uniform, walked up into the stands, went and kissed his wife, went and hugged his kid, and just clackety clackety clack the spikes on the concrete right back into the dugout. And those days are long gone. You wouldn't find that at the Big A. A player just coming into the stands. I don't think you'd find it in Tempe. A player just walking into the stands, go kiss his wife, and go back onto the field. Really, really a special time. And then, of course, my sister and I. Then it was after that. It was time to leave the ballpark, and Dad would take us to a wonderful steak restaurant, and we just still had more and more energy. We'd go to the motel pool and swim and swim and swim. The weather was so wonderful. Swim and swim and swim until we were tired out, and go to the game again the next day. It was just, as a little kid, it was the best, wonderful thing. And then, of course, time went by, and time went by, and I went through school, and I grew up into a young man, and I was working for the Los Angeles Times. I was a cub reporter for them in 1989. So I had a credential for the Los Angeles Times, but I'd just gotten married. So I was a young married man. Oh, hang on. I need to interrupt that story because I got to go back to 1982 when I went out there as a high school student. And I just graduated high school. And me and my best buddy, Mike Ramsey, we used to go out to Palm Springs games. And for whatever reason, there was one time his car wasn't working. He had a pretty nice, what we'd call nowadays an SUV. He had a early version Ford Explorer, but you're talking in 1982. And I had a 1970s VW Bug, but I had tickets to the game, and we said, heck with it. We're going anyway. We had tickets. I believe we ordered the tickets on the phone, and so we drove out there in my VW Bug all the way out to the desert, went out and watched a couple of games, and it was just a nightmare trip coming back because my VW Bug broke down on the Banning Pass. And if you've ever driven that, you know how steep that thing is. And here I'm fighting this VW Bug, trying to get up over the Banning Pass, just trying to get to safety. And it was just dying. And we were wondering how the heck we were going to get home because I believe that we had school the next day or something. Or we had school on Monday, high school. And he became Mike, my friend, became a clerk for Supreme Justice Scalia. We both hit our careers. I became an Angels beat writer. He became a law professor at University of San Diego. But for one night there, we were stuck in Banning with my Volkswagen Bug on blocks, and I was able to he and I were able to push it into a mechanic, and it was bad news. It was the mechanic worked on it for a couple hours. We had nowhere to go, and we ended up checking into some motel in Banning, and I tell you, it wasn't much. And the mechanic told us, well, this is going to require an entire new engine block for your VW to get it going again. Somehow they got that engine block out there from LA. And I think it cost $150, which is a fortune in 1982. Somehow it got paid for. I believe it might have been my parents who paid for that. The mechanic put it back in, and we rolled on back. But that was the one time we got stuck trying to get out there.
Yeah, I remember having a buddy that
student.
we'd go out there. He had a '69 Cougar, and I remember us that thing overheating. Because it would get warm out there. I remember, being in stop and go traffic in the evening, trying to go down the main drag there, and had to pull over and shut the car off because it was not appreciated. So yeah, it was beautiful. And then, like you mentioned earlier, eating out That was always
Yeah.
great. You'd see the
Oh,
players, you'd see them, and I never felt, even as an autograph receiver, never felt like you wanted to bother them because I'd
of
know I'd
course
see
not. You
them.
wouldn't do that.
I'd see them the next
That
day at
was
the
the
ballpark. I was going to see them the next day at the
that,
ballpark. It was an
yeah, yeah.
experience there, and even the visiting teams would come in for at least a 2-game set because they're driving all the way from the
Sure.
Phoenix area. So you'd see those guys
Yeah.
out as well. It was just a great experience and almost a small town feel out there in Palm Springs.
So in 1989, I was a cover reporter on the LA Times, and I just recently got married. And I'll tell you, my wife, she was 23 years old. I was 24. And if there was a 20 on a scale of 10, she was a 20 in terms of looks. She would sit out in right field and, wearing a bikini top and just beautiful. She was catching the eye of a lot of the players, but, during the games. But then afterwards, we're young youths, young adults, and we'd get dressed up nice to go out to dinner by ourselves. We had money. I was making money at the LA Times. So we had enough money to go out to eat. And at that time, there was a wonderful Mexican place, and I believe it's still there on Palm Canyon Drive, 222 South Palm Canyon Drive, Las Casuelas Terraza. And it was a split level old casita that had been divided up into this beautiful restaurant. And it was the Mexican place to go into in town. And I don't know, it was an early game. We got finished and we went out there to go eat a ton of great Mexican food and have frozen margaritas in the sunshine, as you did. I mean, Palm Springs was part of the whole experience. And well, sure enough, she and I were sitting there at a table on their patio, beautiful weather, and we realized, the table next to us is a bunch of ball players, and it was Claudell Washington, Chili Davis, Devon White, uh, Dante Bichette was there, Mike Fetters was definitely there, and a few other players stopped by the table. And the conversation got rolling over pictures of these frozen margaritas. Now, the players themselves were moderating their alcohol. They would pour a little bit of the frozen margarita in a glass and sip it. They were players, and everyone knew they were players. But I remember Claudell Washington. He was 34. He had just signed a $1 million contract as a free agent with the Angels, and Chili Davis was there, and Devo, of course. And they actually asked very politely, "Would you mind if we scoot our table closer to yours?" So they joined my wife and I, and we must have talked baseball and just baseball for 2 hours with those guys. You don't get those times anymore, I don't think.
No.
And nobody got drunk. I remember Jim Abbott stopping by the table, but he was shy. He was a rookie. And I do remember that when it came time to reckoning the bills, oh my goodness, we must have run up a bill in terms of food and frozen margaritas. It was the place to go. I believe, a pitcher of frozen margarita, mango margaritas, or whatever it was they were serving back. They were delicious, and they were flowing down. And the players were minding themselves, well dressed, so well behaved. I remember Claudell Washington asking my wife, "Ma'am, would it be all right if we brought our table closer to yours so we could just talk baseball?" They just wanted to do that. And when it came time to the reckoning of the bill, here comes the waiter, and here comes this massive check. I didn't even want to look at it. I didn't even want to look at it. And back in those days, I remember some of the rookies and younger players just kind of quickly walking away from the table because back in those days, the rookies had to pay for things like that,
Yeah.
in spring training. But I remember this day that it was Claudell Washington took the bill, whipped out his credit card, put it on there. I don't know how much it was. It was hundreds of dollars for like six of us, like my wife and I, plus like 6 or 7 players. Dick Schofield stopped by, had his food too. Whatever it was a massive tab. But let's just suffice to say that Claudell Washington could afford it. and it was very much appreciated that he picked up that tab for us. It was a wonderful conversation, and I must say that I doubt those things happen in Tempe these days. It was a real wonderful memory of the way things were there. It was just a relaxed, casual atmosphere in Palm Springs all the way up until the 80s before they finally moved to Tempe. The reason they moved to Tempe was because, well, in Palm Springs, they only had one ball field. You know, when Knop and Fregosi needed to get in the early work, and they had to show up at the ball field at 7 o'clock in the morning to turn double plays in Palm Springs. Now at Tempe, you've got 6 diamonds or 6.5 diamonds. That's what they needed. But obviously the move to Tempe had to be made for logistical reasons. But in our memories, Palm Springs is always going to be there. It was a super special time. It can't be repeated. I wonder what you think about this. Like, wouldn't it be nice if the Angels could just stop by and play, one exhibition game in Palm Springs per year?
Oh,
Every
I
year.
would
It would
love
be,
it. I think they should move the Freeway
yeah.
Series to Palm Springs. I think that would be awesome if they had just have the Dodgers and Angels play a couple games there, or at least one, like maybe one.
But it's like,
Maybe the first game of the series
but
there,
it's,
and then they play one in Anaheim, one in LA. That would be great. But yeah, just a
but it's economics. When you can sell out, 50,000 seats for the Freeway Series in LA and in Angel Stadium, why would you do that? And now that field is only used for instructional leagues or independent leagues. The field's still there on Baristol Road,
yep.
but while it's a dream, really. It's a dream if they could do it, and I would certainly be there. I would go from Virginia to go be there, but I don't think
Yeah,
it's ever going to happen. I think those
yeah,
days are over,
yeah. I think it
except
was
for in our minds.
it was the California League team for the Angels for a while. The Palm Springs Angels were there from the late '80s
Yeah,
into the early '90s, and I think it has been several in some independent leagues and is still used for like local schools and such. So the field's there, it's still being used, just not on a
yeah,
professional level. And I'm glad you brought up the point about the no practice fields because it didn't have the normal practice field complex. But you remember behind the right center field wall, there was like another field over there. And sometimes you'd have the players over there, like maybe the B roster, non roster players over on that field in the mornings. It was usually like, the 9 a.m., 10
yeah.
a.m. workouts, and they'd be over there while the major leaguers were over on the other field. But it was like one single like playground field with maybe a diamond, if I remember correctly, in the very
No,
back corner of the northeast corridor of that block. But yeah, just
and
definitely,
there were stars. There were stars because of Gene Autry.
yeah,
You would see people once in a while, people like Danny Kaye rolling through,
yeah,
and movie stars that Gene Autry brought in. Gene Autry would sit down in his tunnel behind home plate, cocktail chair down there, and he loved Angels baseball. He would keep score, have his cocktail chair down there in the tunnel, and us fans, we never knew he was there. Like you said, he would come out and greet the fans, but it was just a a special scene, and I really hope that people who are listening to this come on over to angelsnation.com because there's going to be so much more information on there. People like Clyde Wright, Bobby Knopf, Bobby Grich sharing their memories about their times there. Clyde Wright talking about when they went to Holtville. They used to have to go to Holtville down by the Mexican border to do their training because there was a 3-field complex there,
yeah.
back in the 70s, and they could get their work in there. And when they left Holtville, they came to Palm Springs. And Clyde Wright told me, yeah, we got our work in there, but, in Holtville, there was one little old lady who could pour you a nice cold beer, but that was about it. You might get yourself a hamburger. And when they got to Palm Springs, it was a completely different scene because all of a sudden Gene Autry and all the stars were there, and the Autry family would have a big barbecue for the team and all these sorts of things. I'm really looking forward to sharing some of the stories that I've gathered from memorable people, Ross Newhan and Tim Mead, Ed Munson, these people who were there. Tim Mead playing basketball with Dan O'Brien, the Angels GM, back in the '90s, on the basketball court in front of the stadium, before games.
Yep.
Priceless stuff, and I hope everybody reads that stuff. Angels Need. I try not to prop the website that I'm editor too much on here, but if Angel fans, if you miss this, you're missing a real treat.
Yeah, for sure.
BJ wrote one too, and his is really awesome.
Well, thank you. I'm sure I'm nowhere near the information and the content you're going to get from those other names that you mentioned, guys that played the game, we're in the locker room, we're living the life of a player or in on staff. Ross Newhan being a journalist there, I look forward to reading his article because he's a guy who covered the Angels so eloquently and with in such a great professional manner. Like you said, he's a Hall of Famer. I do look forward to that. I'd recommend everybody go over to angelsnation.com, check out the series that Stu's putting up over there with all kinds of guest writers. Great content. Stu, thank you so much for coming up with the idea of let's do a podcast, let's share our memories. And I appreciate you opening up and sharing your memories about your experience in Palm Springs. Good stuff.
Oh, it's great stuff. It's great memories, and it's 60th year anniversary. It was so much different. I'm not saying Tempe isn't great. I'm sure it's great in its own ways. I go there, but when I go to Tempe, it's great. But the players are so much more separated. I believe the field is not as accessible to players, and you're not going to see players hanging out dining with you, as a fan. Those days are over, unfortunately. They're priceless, and that's why I feel like we're lucky to be able to talk about them now.
Agree. Yeah, and I think I have a whole other set of memories from my experience in Arizona. I was an adult during those spring trainings, so it's a very different feeling. But I think if I had to put my finger on one reason that can never recreate it out there, it's that Palm Springs is a decent sized town, but it's got a small town feel. It's still isolated from the rest of the world, whereas the metropolitan Phoenix area, it's a large city and a large area. I don't think you'd ever be able to simulate that. And even I've been to many of the Grapefruit League stadiums and cities also. Little more intimate, probably a little closer to Palm Springs than what you get in the Phoenix area stadiums, but it's such a major complex now. Everybody's got all the training fields, everything's so isolated. You don't have a batting cage right behind the right field bleachers, that the guys are taking their swings in before the game like you did in Palm Springs. And I don't think you'll ever find that anywhere.
No. And of course, when the Angels moved to Tempe, I was in England for very many years. And so I would love to hear or to read your memories of Tempe when you get time to write them. Write them over at angelsnation.com. You're a contributing writer over there yourself. Your stuff is wonderful. And I would love to see you just put your thoughts down there about your Tempe memories, because they are quite different, but they're really special in both ways. You and I could both write stories about what's happening in spring training right now. Joe Madden trimming his roster, all that stuff. That'll all be up there at angelsnation.com. But I'd also love to hear your memories of Tempe spring trainings over there too.
Sounds like a dare or an assignment. I'm willing to take it on, Stu. I'm gonna put that together for you and get you something. Stu, thank you again. If you like this podcast, you're watching it on YouTube, make sure to like it. You can also subscribe to these to watch more of these Angels podcasts. We're here at angelsnation.com and Halo Life, just to create an environment where we talk about the future, the current, and the past Angels. And I love having the opportunity today to celebrate with the Palm Springs history, the first 30 years of Angel history. And thank you again. Don't forget, today wasn't promised, neither is tomorrow, and live your life 9 innings at a time. We'll do this again next time. Thank you.